Lisa Carter stood at her post outside the main conference room. Her rifle hung across her chest and her eyes watched every corner of the hallway. She had been a Marine for 8 years, but this was her first time on Kepler Station. The station floated in space between 3 star systems. It was built for meetings between different alien races. Today those aliens were having an emergency meeting. Lisa could hear their voices through the thick doors, but she could not understand most of what they said. Earth's ambassador, Robert Hayes, had brought Lisa and 5 other Marines for protection. Hayes was a good man who always tried to do the right thing. He had gray hair and tired eyes. Lisa had worked with him before on other worlds. Through her earpiece, Lisa heard the meeting getting louder. The aliens were arguing about something big. She pressed her ear to listen better. "The Devourers have taken 3 systems," said a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. That was probably one of the Vorthan. They were made of living crystal and always sounded strange when they spoke. "We must prepare the evacuation protocols," said another voice. This one was smooth and cold. Lisa knew it belonged to High Chancellor Vextar, the leader of the Zephyrians. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin humans, but with blue skin and no hair. They thought they were better than everyone else. Ambassador Hayes spoke up. "What about the human colonies in the outer systems? We have 47 settlements out there. 200 million people." Lisa felt her heart speed up. Her brother Danny lived on New Montana with his wife and 2 kids. That was one of the outer colonies. She had not seen them in 2 years, but they sent messages every few weeks. "The outer rim is not our concern," said Chancellor Vextar. His voice was cold as ice. "Your people chose to spread so far from protection. We cannot risk our ships for settlements that serve no strategic purpose." Lisa's hand tightened on her rifle. She wanted to march into that room and tell the Chancellor exactly what she thought. But Marines did not speak unless spoken to, especially not during diplomatic meetings. Ambassador Hayes tried again. "These are human lives we're talking about, families, children. Every species has made sacrifices," said the Vorthan delegate. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. This is basic logic." Lisa heard Hayes take a deep breath. "Then what do you suggest we do?" "Follow the core species protection protocol," said Chancellor Vextar. "We evacuate the homeworlds and primary colonies of all council member species. Everything else is acceptable loss." The room went quiet for a long moment. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. "Acceptable loss," Hayes repeated slowly. "You're talking about 200 million human beings." "I am talking about survival," the Chancellor replied. "The Devourers consume everything in their path. We cannot save everyone. We must save those who matter most to galactic stability." Lisa felt sick. Danny's kids were 6 and 8 years old. They loved to ride the big farming machines and chase the local animals around their yard. In her last message, Danny's daughter had drawn a picture of Earth and asked when Aunt Lisa would visit. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. Lisa stood at her post and listened to the aliens argue about which worlds deserved to live and which ones could die. Every time Hayes tried to speak up for the human colonies, the other delegates shut him down. When the meeting finally ended, the aliens filed out past Lisa. Chancellor Vextar walked by without even looking at her. The Vorthon delegate's crystal body caught the light and made rainbow patterns on the walls. The Cathera delegate clicked and chirped as he walked, his insect-like body moving in quick, jerky steps. Ambassador Hayes was the last to leave. He looked older than when he had gone into the meeting. His shoulders were bent like he was carrying a heavy weight. "Sergeant Carter," he said quietly. "Yes, sir. Walk with me." They moved down the hallway toward the human quarters. The station was huge, with corridors that stretched for miles. Different sections were built for different alien species. The human section was small and simple compared to the fancy areas where the Zephyrians stayed. "That meeting didn't go well," Hayes said as they walked. "No, sir, it didn't." Hayes stopped at a big window that looked out into space. Stars filled the black sky like tiny diamonds. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere else was New Montana and all the other human colonies. "They've made their decision," Hayes said. "The Council will only evacuate core species worlds and primary colonies. Earth is safe. Mars is safe. The big industrial worlds are safe. What about the others?" Lisa asked, even though she already knew the answer. Hayes shook his head. "New Montana, New Texas, Harvest Moon, all the farming and mining colonies. They're not on the list." Lisa stared out at the stars. Sir, my brother lives on New Montana. I know, Hayes said softly. I read your file before we came here. I'm sorry, Sergeant. What are our orders? Hayes was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. We follow the Council's decision. We don't interfere with their evacuation plans. We protect Earth and the primary colonies, and the others? The others are not our responsibility. That's what they told me in there. The Council has spoken. Lisa felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. Not our responsibility. That's right. The Council knows best. They have more experience with these devourer things than we do. If they say we can't save everyone, then we can't save everyone. Hayes put his hand on Lisa's shoulder. I know this is hard, but we're Marines. We follow orders. We trust the chain of command. Lisa nodded, but she did not trust the Council. She had seen the way Chancellor Vextar looked at Ambassador Hayes during the meeting, like Hayes was something dirty he had stepped in, like humans were pests that needed to be tolerated but not respected. Get some rest, Sergeant, Hayes said. We'll be here for another few days while they finalize the evacuation plans. Lisa saluted and walked to her quarters. The room was small and gray, with just a bed, a desk, and a small window. She sat on the bed and pulled out her personal communicator. She had 3 new messages from Danny. The first one was from last week. Danny was talking about the harvest and how good the crops looked this year. The second one was from 3 days ago. He had heard rumors about something bad happening in the outer systems, but he was not worried. Earth would protect them, he said. Earth always protected human colonies. The third message was from this morning. Danny's voice was different now. Scared. Lisa, we're hearing reports about alien ships in the next system over. Military ships, but not human ones. The local government is telling everyone to stay calm. But people are starting to panic. Are you hearing anything on your end? Send word when you can. Lisa stared at the communicator for a long time. Then she put it away and lay down on her bed. She stared at the ceiling and thought about acceptable losses and responsibilities and little girls who drew pictures of Earth. 3 weeks passed like a bad dream. Lisa watched the news feeds from her quarters every day. The Devourer fleet was moving faster than anyone had expected. They had already reached the outer edge of human space. The evacuation had started, but it was not going the way Ambassador Hayes had promised. Lisa saw the lists of worlds being evacuated. Earth was at the top. Mars was second. The big industrial colonies were next. But she did not see New Montana anywhere on the list. She tried calling Danny every day, but the messages were taking longer and longer to get through. The last one she received was 4 days old. Lisa, things are getting bad here. We can see ships in the sky, but they're not landing. The government says evacuation ships are coming, but nobody knows when. Sarah is scared. The kids keep asking when we're going home to Earth. I don't know what to tell them. Lisa's hands shook as she played the message again. Sarah was Danny's wife. She was a teacher who loved books and always made the best apple pie. The kids were Emma and Jake. Emma wanted to be a scientist like their Aunt Lisa. Jake wanted to be a farmer like his dad. That morning, Admiral Kate Morrison called a meeting with all the human personnel on the station. Morrison was tough and smart. She had gray hair cut short and scars on her hands from her days as a ship engineer. Lisa respected her more than almost anyone. I'll make this quick, Morrison said to the group of Marines and diplomats. Earth Command has given us new orders. We are to follow the Council's evacuation protocol exactly. No exceptions. No unauthorized rescue missions. No acting outside our assigned parameters. One of the younger Marines raised his hand. Admiral, what about the colonies that aren't on the evacuation list? Morrison's face went hard. Those colonies are not our responsibility. The Council has made the strategic decision that saving them would put too many ships at risk. We follow that decision. Lisa felt her stomach twist. Admiral, with respect, there are 200 million people on those worlds. I'm aware of the numbers, Sergeant. Morrison's voice was cold, but Lisa could see something else in her eyes. Pain, maybe. But we cannot risk starting a war with the Council over worlds that cannot be defended long-term anyway. After the meeting, Lisa walked the halls of the station. She could see Council ships through the windows, big and sleek and powerful. They were loading up with evacuees from the Zephyrian and Vorthan homeworlds. She did not see any human ships in the evacuation fleet. That night, Lisa could not sleep. She kept thinking about Emma and Jake. She remembered the last time she had visited New Montana. Jake had shown her his pet rabbit, and Emma had made her a friendship bracelet. They had all sat on the porch and watched the sunset over the wheat fields. At 2 in the morning, her communicator buzzed. New message from Danny. Lisa's heart jumped. She grabbed the device and played the message. Danny's face appeared on the screen, but he looked different, older, scared. There were other people behind him, and Lisa could hear shouting in the background. Lisa, if you get this, the evacuation ships came, but they won't take us. They said we're not priority civilians, only council species and essential human personnel. The rest of us, they said we're on our own. Danny's voice cracked. The Devourers will be here in 3 days, maybe less. We can see their ships on the horizon. Sarah and the kids. Lisa, I don't know what to do. There's talk of fighting, but we're farmers and miners. We don't have weapons that can hurt those things. The message cut to static. Lisa tried calling back, but she got an error message. Communications to New Montana had been cut. Lisa sat in the dark for a long time. Then she got dressed and walked to Ambassador Hayes's quarters. She knocked on the door until he answered. Hayes looked like he had not slept in days. His eyes were red and his hair was messy. Sergeant Carter, it's late. Sir, I just got a message from my brother. The evacuation ships are refusing to take human colonists from New Montana. Hayes closed his eyes. I know, you know. The council clarified their evacuation priorities yesterday. Only essential personnel and immediate family members of council delegates. Everyone else, he shrugged helplessly. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest like fire. Sir, those are our people out there. I know that. But my hands are tied. The council was very clear. If we interfere with their evacuation protocol, Earth could lose its membership. We could lose access to council technology, council trade routes, council protection. So we sacrificed 200 million people to keep our seat at their table. Hayes met her eyes. Yes, that's exactly what we do. Because if we don't, Earth itself could be next. Sometimes you have to make hard choices, Sergeant. Lisa stared at him. Is that what you call this? A hard choice? It's the only choice that makes sense. I'm sorry about your brother, but this is bigger than one family. This is about the survival of the human race. Lisa left Hayes's quarters and walked to the observation deck. It was a big room with windows that looked out at space. A few other people were there, mostly aliens who could not sleep. She found a quiet corner and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Danny and Sarah were probably holding their kids and trying to figure out how to keep them safe. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were waiting for help that would never come. Lisa pulled out her service rifle and started cleaning it. It was something to do with her hands while she thought. The rifle was an old model, but it was reliable. She had carried it through 3 tours of duty and 2 small wars. As she worked, she heard footsteps behind her. Admiral Morrison sat down in the chair next to her. Can't sleep either? Morrison asked. No, ma'am. They sat in silence for a while. Then Morrison spoke again. My daughter lives on Harvest Moon. She's a doctor there, married to a mining engineer. They have 2 little boys. Lisa looked at the Admiral. Morrison was staring out at the stars, her face like stone. What are you going to do? Lisa asked. Morrison was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up. I'm going to follow orders, she said. And you're going to follow orders too. That's what Marines do. But as she walked away, Morrison paused at the door. Of course, she said without turning around. Sometimes orders get misinterpreted. Communications break down. Ships end up in the wrong place at the wrong time. Then she was gone, leaving Lisa alone with her rifle and the stars and the terrible weight of knowing what was about to happen to her family. Lisa did not understand what Admiral Morrison meant until the next day. She was walking past the communications center when she heard voices inside. The door was slightly open and she could see Morrison talking to someone on a secure channel. Jake, are you getting this? Morrison was saying. The voice that came back was crackling with static, but Lisa could make out the words. Yes, Admiral. Captain Sullivan here. We're reading you on the secure channel. Good. How many ships do you have ready? 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers, and about 30 smaller vessels. The cargo haulers are standing by too. Amy Brooks has 23 heavy transports ready to move. Morrison nodded. That's not enough for a full evacuation, but it's a start. What's your timeline? We can be at the jump point in 18 hours. From there, it's a 6-hour burn to the New Montana system. Lisa's heart started racing. She pressed closer to the door to hear better. Remember, Morrison said, this conversation never happened. As far as official records show, you're conducting routine patrol exercises in the outer rim. If anyone asks, you got lost. Captain Sullivan laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Lost, right, Admiral. What if Earth Command finds out? Then I'll be the one in trouble, not you. You're just following what you think are legitimate orders from a superior officer. And if the Council finds out? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Jake, those are our people out there. They're waiting for us to come get them. Understood, Admiral. We'll bring them home. The transmission ended. Lisa quickly stepped away from the door and pretended to be walking past. Her mind was spinning. Morrison was planning some kind of rescue mission, but she was keeping it secret from Earth Command and the Council. That afternoon, Lisa was on guard duty when another encrypted message came through. This time it was from the New Montana system. Lisa recognized the voice as Ben Taylor, the civilian coordinator for the colonial government. This is New Montana calling any human ships in range. The Devourer scouts have reached our system. We can see them on the edge of our sensors. We estimate 36 hours before the main fleet arrives. Ben's voice was steady, but Lisa could hear the fear underneath. The evacuation ships that came here refused to take us. They said we weren't priority, so we're going to make our own evacuation. Every ship we have, every cargo hauler and personal transport, we're loading them up with as many people as we can. There was a pause. For those who can't get on the ships, we're going to fight. I know that sounds crazy. We're farmers and miners, not soldiers. But we're not going to just sit here and wait to die. The message continued. We've got mining charges and construction equipment. We're going to make those metal bastards work for it. If any human military ships are listening to this, we could use some help. But if not, we understand. Take care of Earth. Take care of the core worlds. And remember us. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. These were not soldiers or heroes. They were just regular people who wanted to protect their families. They were doing what they could with what they had. That night, Lisa made her decision. She found Admiral Morrison in her quarters. Morrison was packing a bag which told Lisa everything she needed to know. Admiral, I want to volunteer for the mission. Morrison looked up. What mission, Sergeant? The mission to New Montana. The one that doesn't officially exist. Morrison studied her for a long moment. You could be court-martialed for this. Your career would be over. My brother is down there. His wife, his kids. I don't care about my career. This isn't just about your family. If we do this, we're going against direct orders from Earth Command. We're defying the Council's evacuation protocol. We could start a war. Lisa thought about Emma and Jake, about all the families waiting for help that the Council said would never come. Then we start a war, she said. Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Get your gear. We leave in 2 hours. Lisa went to her quarters and packed her equipment. As she was checking her rifle, her communicator buzzed. Another message from Ben Taylor on New Montana. This is our final transmission. The Devourer main fleet will be here in 12 hours. We've got about half the population loaded onto ships, but the rest of us are staying to fight. We've rigged the mining equipment with explosives. We've turned the farming vehicles into weapons. It's not much, but it's what we have. Ben's voice got stronger. To any humans listening to this, remember that we didn't give up. Remember that when they said we didn't matter, we decided that we mattered to each other. And if you're thinking about coming to help us, don't. Save yourselves. Save Earth, we've got this. The transmission ended. Lisa stared at the communicator. Ben Taylor and the other colonists were going to fight giant alien machines with farming equipment and mining charges. They knew they could not win, but they were going to fight anyway. Lisa finished packing and headed to the docking bay. She found Admiral Morrison there with Captain Sullivan and about 50 other Marines and naval personnel. These were volunteers, people who had decided to risk everything for the chance to save their fellow humans. Captain Sullivan was a big man with kind eyes and calloused hands. He looked like someone who had worked hard his whole life and never complained about it. Sergeant Carter, he said when he saw her. I heard your brother's down there. Yes, sir. We'll get him out. We'll get all of them out. Lisa looked around at the faces of the volunteers. They were scared, but they were determined. They knew they were going against orders. They knew they could lose everything. But they also knew that somewhere out in space their people were waiting for help. Admiral, Lisa said, what do we tell the Council when this is over? Morrison checked her sidearm and smiled grimly. We tell them that sometimes humans don't follow orders very well. We tell them that when our family is in trouble, we don't ask permission to help. She looked out at the stars through the docking bay window. We tell them that they were wrong about what our responsibility is. Our responsibility isn't to follow their rules. Our responsibility is to each other. The ships launched an hour later. 12 destroyers, 6 cruisers, 30 smaller vessels, and 23 cargo transports. Not enough to fight the entire Devourer fleet, but maybe enough to get some people out. As they jumped into hyperspace, Lisa thought about Ben Taylor and his mining charges. She thought about Danny and Sarah and the kids. She thought about all the humans who had been told they didn't matter enough to save. The Council had said it wasn't their responsibility. Earth Command had said it wasn't their responsibility. But Lisa and the others in these ships had decided that maybe responsibility wasn't something you were given. Maybe it was something you chose. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Montana system, just as the Devourer main force was closing in on the planet. Lisa stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance next to Captain Sullivan, watching the tactical display with growing horror. The Devourers were not like any enemy she had ever seen. Their ships were black and angular, covered in what looked like metal teeth. They moved through space like a swarm of insects, consuming everything in their path. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Brooks over the communication channel. She was commanding the cargo transport fleet. "There are so many of them." "Steady, Amy," said Captain Sullivan. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy." Lisa watched the display as the Devourer fleet approached New Montana. The planet looked so small and defenseless against the massive alien armada, but as they got closer, she started to see something that surprised her. The planet was fighting back. "Are you seeing this?" asked Commander Ryan Clark from one of the cruisers. "The colonists actually did it. They're fighting those things with farming equipment." On the surface of New Montana, Ben Taylor and his people had turned their world into a fortress. They had rigged the grain silos to explode. They had mounted mining lasers on the big harvesting machines. They had dug trenches and bunkers using construction equipment. When the first Devourer landing ships touched down, the humans were ready. Lisa watched through the satellite feed as a massive combine harvester charged straight at a Devourer walker. The machine was covered in armor plating and bristling with improvised weapons. When it hit the alien walker, both machines exploded in a ball of fire. "That crazy bastard did it," Sullivan said with admiration. "They're actually hurting those things." But the colonists were badly outnumbered. For every Devourer they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Lisa could see that they would not last much longer. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," came the voice over the fleet channel. "We're going in. Remember, our job is to get as many people out as possible. But if you see a chance to hurt these metal bastards, take it." The human fleet charged into the Devourer swarm. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for the next 100 years. The humans did not fight like any other species the galaxy had ever seen. They did not retreat when they were outnumbered. They did not surrender when their ships were damaged. They fought with a fury that shocked even their enemies. Captain Sullivan rammed his damaged destroyer straight into the side of a Devourer mothership. "This is for New Montana," he shouted over the communication channel as his ship exploded, taking the alien vessel with it. Lieutenant Brooks used her cargo transport like a giant bomb, filling it with explosive materials and crashing it into a cluster of Devourer fighters. Commander Clark's cruiser had lost most of its weapons, so he used it like a battering ram, smashing through enemy formations to clear a path for the evacuation ships. On the surface, the battle was just as fierce. Ben Taylor had organized the colonists into small groups that hit the Devourers fast and then disappeared. They used their knowledge of the local terrain to set traps and ambushes. Lisa watched through her rifle scope as a group of farmers led a pack of Devourer walkers into a canyon. When the aliens were trapped inside, the humans triggered charges that brought down the canyon walls, burying the enemy machines under tons of rock. "These people are incredible," said Sergeant Pete Johnson, one of the Marines fighting alongside Lisa on the surface. "They're not even soldiers, and they're fighting like this is their job." Lisa smiled grimly as she lined up another shot. "It is their job. Protecting family is everyone's job." The battle raged for 6 hours. The human fleet was taking heavy losses, but they were also evacuating thousands of colonists. More importantly, they were doing something no one had expected. They were winning. Word of the battle spread quickly through space. Other human colonies that had been written off as lost suddenly found their courage. If New Montana could fight, so could they. The colony on Harvest Moon sent a message. "We see what you're doing out there. We're with you." They began attacking Devourer supply lines with converted mining ships. New Texas joined the fight with their entire civilian defense force. Prairie World used their agricultural ships to ram Devourer transports. Frontier Station turned their cargo haulers into missile platforms. Within hours, the entire Outer Rim was in revolt. Colonies that the Council had abandoned were fighting back with everything they had. Farmers became soldiers, miners became pilots, teachers became tacticians, and they were not fighting alone. Human ships started arriving from everywhere. Military vessels that had gotten lost during routine patrols. Cargo haulers whose captains had misunderstood their orders. Even passenger liners whose crews decided that saving lives was more important than following regulations. The most famous arrival was a converted cruise ship called the Dancing Queen. Its captain, an old woman named Rose Martinez, had painted "Come and Take It" on the side of her ship in letters 10 feet tall. She used the ship to ram a Devourer command vessel, then evacuated 3,000 colonists while the alien ship was sinking. "This is Rose Martinez to all human ships," she broadcast on an open channel. "They said we couldn't save everyone. They said it wasn't our responsibility. Well, I've got news for them. We don't take orders from cowards." The Devourers began to retreat. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Every species they had fought before had followed logical military doctrine. They had retreated when outnumbered. They had surrendered when defeat was certain. But humans did not seem to understand the concept of acceptable losses. When their ships were destroyed, they used the wreckage as weapons. When their weapons ran out, they rammed their enemies. When their colonies were attacked, they turned farming equipment into instruments of war. Lisa found herself fighting alongside Ben Taylor in the ruins of a grain silo. The older man was covered in dirt and blood, but he was still fighting. "Why?" she asked him during a brief lull in the battle. "Why did you stay? You could have evacuated with the others." Ben reloaded his improvised weapon, which was basically a mining laser bolted to a piece of farm machinery. "Because this is my home. These are my people. When someone threatens your family, you don't run, you fight." He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. Besides, someone had to show those metal bastards that humans don't give up easy. As the sun set over New Montana, the last of the Devourer ground forces retreated to their ships. The battle was won, but the cost had been terrible. Half the human fleet was destroyed or damaged. Thousands of Marines and naval personnel had died, but they had saved New Montana. They had saved Harvest Moon and New Texas and Prairie World and a dozen other colonies. They had shown the galaxy that humans would fight for each other no matter what the odds, and they had sent a message to the Galactic Council. Humanity would not abandon its own, no matter what anyone else said about responsibility. 6 months after the Battle of New Montana, Lisa stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station cleaning her rifle. She had been promoted to lieutenant after the battle, though the promotion came with a formal reprimand for conduct unbecoming and failure to follow direct orders. She did not care about the reprimand. Danny and Sarah and the kids were alive. That was all that mattered. The galaxy had changed since the battle. The Devourer threat was gone, destroyed not by the careful strategic retreat of the Galactic Council, but by the stubborn refusal of humans to abandon anyone. Word of what humanity had done spread to every star system. Other species began to look at humans differently. The Cathera sent a delegation to Earth asking for military advisors. The Vorthon requested human protection for their mining colonies. Even some of the smaller council species started questioning why they followed the Zephyrians' lead. The council itself was in chaos. Half the member species were demanding explanations for why they had been willing to sacrifice so many lives. The other half were angry that the humans had acted without permission and disrupted the natural order of galactic politics. Ambassador Hayes walked up behind Lisa. He looked different now. Older, but also somehow stronger. The defeat at the council meeting had changed him. "Any word from your brother?" he asked. "He sent a message yesterday. The rebuilding is going well. They're calling the new town New Hope instead of New Montana. Sarah says the kids love it there." Hayes nodded. "That's good. The reconstruction aid packages are helping a lot of the outer colonies. It's amazing what people can accomplish when they're not being told they don't matter." Lisa looked out at the stars. Human patrol ships moved between the trade routes now, protecting merchant vessels from pirates and other threats. The Council had not authorized these patrols, but they also had not tried to stop them. Everyone knew that the human ships were the only reason the shipping lanes were safe. "Lieutenant Carter," said a cold voice behind them. Lisa turned to see High Chancellor Vextar approaching. The Zephyrian looked the same as always. Tall, thin, with blue skin and pale eyes that seemed to see everything. But there was something different about the way he carried himself. Less arrogant, maybe. "More careful, Chancellor," Lisa said politely. "I wanted to speak with you about the incident 6 months ago." Ambassador Hayes stepped forward. "Chancellor, Lieutenant Carter was following orders from her superior officers." Vextar held up a hand. "Please, Ambassador, I want to hear from the lieutenant herself." Lisa set down her rifle and faced the Chancellor. "What did you want to know, sir?" "Your species acted against the direct orders of the Galactic Council. You risked starting a war that could have consumed the entire galaxy. You violated every principle of military discipline and diplomatic protocol." Lisa waited. She had heard this speech before from various council delegates over the past 6 months. "And yet," Vextar continued, "you succeeded where our careful plans failed. You saved not just the human colonies, but several council worlds as well. The Devourers were so focused on fighting your forces that they left themselves vulnerable to counterattack." The Chancellor moved to stand beside Lisa at the window. "Tell me, Lieutenant, how does your species justify such reckless behavior?" Lisa thought about the question. She had been asked variations of it dozens of times by council investigators, military tribunals, and diplomatic committees. "We don't justify it, sir. We don't need to." Vextar's pale eyes narrowed. "Explain. You called it reckless. We called it necessary. You said those colonies weren't our responsibility. We decided they were." Lisa picked up her rifle and began cleaning it again. "The difference is that you were thinking about politics and strategy and acceptable losses. We were thinking about family." "Family," Vextar repeated. "You would risk everything for people you have never met?" "They were human. That made them family." The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "Your species is difficult to understand. The Council has spent months trying to figure out how to respond to what you did. And what did you decide? That we cannot control you. Your species does not fit into our careful order. You do not follow our rules. You make decisions based on emotion rather than logic." Lisa looked up from her rifle. "Is that a problem?" Vextar stared out at the human patrol ships moving through space. 6 months ago, I would have said yes. The Council exists to maintain stability and order in the galaxy. Species that act unpredictably disrupt that order. And now I'm not so sure. The other species are asking why their representatives were so quick to abandon entire worlds. They are asking why humans were the only ones willing to fight for people they barely knew. The Chancellor turned to face Lisa directly. "Your actions have caused a crisis of confidence in the Council's leadership. Several species are threatening to leave and form their own alliances. The galactic order that has existed for 1,000 years is falling apart." Lisa slowly lowered her rifle and looked at the Chancellor. A small smile played across her face. "Good," she said. Vextar's eyes widened. "Good? You think the collapse of galactic civilization is good?" "I think a civilization that's willing to sacrifice 200 million people for the sake of order probably needs to collapse." Lisa's smile grew wider. "Maybe it's time for something better." "And what would you replace it with?" "I don't know. But I know it would be something that doesn't decide who lives and who dies based on politics. Something that believes everyone matters." Vextar studied her for a long time. "Your species will never fit into any orderly system of government." "No, sir, we won't. You will continue to act irrationally. You will continue to put individual lives above strategic considerations. You will continue to fight battles you cannot win for people you barely know." Lisa looked out at the human ships patrolling the trade routes, protecting aliens who had been willing to abandon human colonies just 6 months earlier. "Yes, sir, we will." The Chancellor shook his head. "It makes no sense. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be right." Vextar was quiet for another moment. Then he said something that surprised Lisa. Perhaps that is not such a bad thing. Perhaps the galaxy needs a species that does not always make sense, a species that acts on principle rather than logic." He turned to leave, then paused. "Lieutenant, your species frightens us, but after watching what you did for those colonies, I think perhaps we need to be frightened. Perhaps we have been too comfortable with our careful plans and acceptable losses. As the Chancellor walked away, Ambassador Hayes moved to stand beside Lisa. That was interesting, he said. Yes, sir, it was. Any regrets about what happened? Lisa looked out at the stars, thinking about Danny and Sarah and the kids building their new life on New Hope. She thought about Ben Taylor and his mining charges, about Captain Sullivan ramming his ship into the enemy, about Rose Martinez and her cruise ship painted with defiant words, "No, sir. No regrets at all," Hayes smiled. Good. Because there's another situation developing in the Kepler system. Some mining colonies are reporting strange ships in their area. The Council is debating whether they're worth protecting. Lisa picked up her rifle and checked the ammunition. And what does Earth Command say? Earth Command says it's not our responsibility. Lisa looked at Hayes and smiled the same smile she had given Chancellor Vextar. Well then, she said, I guess we better go get lost on a patrol mission. As they walked toward the docking bay, Lisa thought about responsibility and family, and the strange way humans had of making their own rules. The Council had said it wasn't their responsibility to save those colonies. Maybe they were right. Maybe it wasn't humanity's responsibility to protect every threatened world in the galaxy. But Lisa had learned something important 6 months ago. Sometimes the best things humans did were the things they weren't supposed to do. Sometimes being human meant deciding that everyone was family, whether it made sense or not. And if that frightened the rest of the galaxy, well, maybe that wasn't such a bad thing either.